Have we reached a point where we have become so obsessed with healing that we have kind of blurred the boundaries on what that actually means? Within a lot of the conversations right now around boundaries or dating or protecting my peace, I often find myself listening to those conversations and wondering, is that healing or is it hiding? So much of the kind of wellness rhetoric that I hear right now is pushing us towards the latter, and I don't think it's really helping us. I think it's why a lot of people spend a lot of time on healing and yet still currently feel quite stuck, quite lonely, or quite disempowered. In this episode, I am going to look without any shaming or judgment, because I've done this too, at some of the places where what we might perceive to be healing is actually hiding. And also why we do this, as well as what you can do to change things for yourself if what I'm saying resonates with you. Hello and welcome to Notes on Vulnerability. My name is Alex and I'm a resilience coach. And I am here to help you find freedom from whatever is holding you back right now so that you can actually thrive at life. I work with the mind and the nervous system to make changing your life really simple and really fucking satisfying. This is season 4 of Notes on Vulnerability, in which you will find some fantastic interviews with really interesting and inspiring people, as well as shorter episodes like this one, which is me sharing the insights and ideas that I think might be useful for a lot of us right now. Because if there's something I've realised as a resilience coach, is that we often make life a lot harder than it needs to be. And when we're hiding but calling it healing, that really helps no one. Before anyone gets too defensive here, I am including myself in the group of people who have done this. In fact, I think most of us have done this. Most of us have mistaken hiding for healing at some point in our lives. So there is no shame in this. You know, for example, we've called something healing when actually it was avoidance. Or we've used words like protecting my peace when really it was us not doing something because we were afraid. Or we've convinced ourselves that we don't want something when actually the truth is that we really do want it. But the vulnerability required to go after it just feels completely unbearable. And that's one of the main reasons that I actually wanted to talk about this. Because when we slip into this way of perceiving things, we are actually choosing to follow fear. We're shrinking who we are, and we're staying inside our comfort zones too much. And to be honest, there really isn't much healing to be found inside your comfort zone. It is a place where we sometimes need to be, but it's not somewhere that you can create healing or growth for yourself. Because the reason it's your comfort zone is that it's full of everything that is familiar to you, everything that is comfortable. So all the time you're in there, you're just not doing anything different. And the difference between healing and hiding might be one of the most important distinctions when it comes to resilience, because both of them are going to take a lot of your energy. And I've found that when someone is doing one or the other one is not possible. So it's really important to make sure that where you are putting your focus and energy is actually where you want it to go and where it's going to produce the result that you're hoping for. Making the distinction is so important because they can actually feel very similar. So both obviously seem to involve boundaries. Both seem to involve saying no, paying attention to yourself. Both involve listening to your nervous system. But the difference between healing and hiding is often the motivation, as well as where you end up as a result of what you're doing. One is fear-driven and the other is driven by courage. One expands your life and the other one will shrink it. The real challenge is knowing which one you're doing in each moment, because we very rarely wake up in the morning and kind of consciously choose to hide from our lives. You know, we're not sitting there in bed thinking, well, today I would like to avoid my potential. I mean, you know, being honest, we've probably all had a few days where we have done that. But on the whole, that isn't how we end up hiding. It's not an intentional, conscious thing. Instead, we really start out with good intentions. You know, we know there's something that needs to change, and part of us actually believes that we are making a choice that seems sensible, reasonable, self-aware. Maybe it's been inspired by something that someone said, or, you know, a viral post on Instagram that lots of other people seem to agree with. So it appears to make a lot of sense. Sometimes it's really difficult to see that you're doing this when you're in it, unless you've got someone like me holding up a mirror to you at the time. So let me give you a few examples of hiding disguised as healing so we can get clear on what this actually looks like. For example, I'm waiting until I feel more confident. That is hiding. I'm just not ready yet. That's usually hiding. I need to do more work on myself first. An indication of hiding. I need more certainty. I need to know exactly how it's going to work. I'll be honest, sometimes some of these do have an element of truth in them. You know, that you need a boundary, or that preparation might be useful, or that waiting might be wise. But again, I think the key is to look at the motivation here. Do you need to prepare more because you know that you haven't prepared enough? Or is it simply that you just don't trust yourself enough to stop preparing and just do it? Do you really need to work more on yourself, or do you just not believe in yourself? Are you waiting because it seems wise to wait, or just because you're too scared to begin? This podcast is actually quite a good example of this. It's obviously about vulnerability, but for years I avoided doing any video episodes like this. And the reasons I came up with for this were plentiful. For example, I don't have any video editing skills. I don't know where I would shoot it. I cannot present flawlessly. I do weird things with my face when I'm talking to the camera. The vulnerability feels like just too much to be seen so kind of obviously by so many people. But the reality is that I was never going to get to such a place of perfection with this that I could avoid someone else finding fault with it or having a negative view of it, which is kind of what I was scared of. And I couldn't avoid getting things wrong, especially when I hadn't even taken any steps to kind of work out how to make it happen. So I didn't know what the challenges would actually be. So I began to realize there was no way for me to switch off the uncertainty of success or failure before actually doing it. And that's what I was trying to do by doing nothing and basically telling myself I wasn't ready yet. Right now, it's obviously very much a work in progress, but it has made me realize how important it was for me just to begin and to give myself permission to learn as I go, like to be a beginner and to let that be okay, even in such a highly visible way. You know, I'm passionate about the topics that I cover on this podcast, and I want to communicate them, you know, face to face. And while I'm still definitely no expert at producing video podcasts, I'm not a complete beginner now because you're watching this. And on that topic, if you are watching this, I would really appreciate likes, shares, reviews, anything that you can do to get this out to a wider audience would be so helpful, because this is such a new channel. So the point of sharing that story is that there is no value in waiting until you're ready and calling it being sensible if what you're really doing is avoiding your fear. And if hearing that makes you feel a kind of creeping sense of shame, then just stop that right now, because I'm not here to shame you. I'm not here to encourage you to see yourself as a problem in any way. The point is really just to show how convincing hiding can feel when we're inside of it, how right it can feel, because it seems safe. And also that all of us do it. This is a universal experience for everybody at some point, but you do not have to keep doing this if it doesn't feel right to you anymore. One of the reasons I think we do this, we choose hiding over healing, is because we've become so focused on feeling safe that we've perhaps stopped asking whether we are really living. I think this comes from the same place as the pursuit of nervous system regulation as some kind of perpetual state of calm. That's not what regulation is, just FYI. But it's all part of the same narrative of wellness perfectionism that means that, you know, we're trying to minimize all the bumps in the road before we even get to them, before they even exist. Of course, safety matters. It really matters to your nervous system. But human beings also need thriving and challenge and growth as much as we need safety. The nervous system also responds to things like that. But those things they're all quite a challenge for your nervous system, especially a nervous system that lacks capacity. And as you'll know if you've listened to the episode I previously recorded about capacity, which was called Why Do Some People Change Their Lives and Others Stay Stuck? Your nervous system has a very different agenda to your dreams. In fact, it doesn't really give a shit about your dreams. Your nervous system doesn't care if something you're doing is meaningful. All it cares about is whether it feels safe. And meaningful and safe, not the same thing. For example, you know, being visible might be meaningful. Starting a new business might be really meaningful. Writing the book, meaningful. Again, having the difficult conversation might be meaningful. Even just being honest about what you really want is really meaningful. But just because those things are meaningful, just because they mean something and they align with your goals, it doesn't mean that your nervous system is going to vote yes to doing them. In fact, for many of us, it votes absolutely fucking not to those things, because they require tackling challenge, growth, vulnerability, and change, and those things may be outside your current nervous system capacity. And when the nervous system votes no, self-sabotage is what happens next. But remember this, your nervous system is not raising the red flag because doing those things is the wrong choice for you. It's literally just raising the red flag because they create uncertainty, because they are uncertain. And uncertainty has always been one of the nervous system's least favourite things. Let's talk about this idea of protecting your peace, because This is such a commonly used phrase, and I think it's a great example of where healing language often gets misunderstood, because there are absolutely times when withdrawing from a situation is the healing. You know, there are situations where leaving is the healing, where saying no is the healing, or where creating distance is the healing, or where stopping is the healing. And I would never suggest that these things cannot be part of healing. But I think it's important to make sure that you are clear in situations like that on whether you really are protecting your peace or whether you're actually protecting your limitations. And there is no objective standard for this. You need to have enough self-awareness and enough connection to your nervous system to be able to understand your own motivations, to be able to understand whether you're creating safety because you actually genuinely need it, or because you've actually become attached to avoiding discomfort, because those really aren't the same thing. Healing is something that will eventually increase your ability to engage with life and not reduce it. And I think this is where a lot of confusion has arisen around the idea of healing. You know, I've seen a lot of people kind of selling the idea that healing is getting to a place where nothing really affects you anymore, where we are calm all the time, confident all the time, unbothered. Nobody can trigger us, nobody can upset us, nothing feels scary or uncomfortable. But unfortunately, that is not healing, that's armor. And one of the things that I've noticed about armor is that it doesn't just keep the difficult stuff out, it keeps everything out. So as well as the difficult stuff, armor will also keep out the opportunities, the connection, the joy, the spontaneity. It will keep out the creativity, the vulnerability that you really need to enrich your life. It will keep out your life in general. You either let all of it in or you let none of it in. One of my favorite ideas about resilience is that soft is not the opposite of strong. Soft is what strength looks like when it's secure. And I think healing works in exactly the same way. Healing isn't about becoming so immune to life that you are never affected by it. That was never the aim. The purpose of healing is to become capable of living life. And those two things, again, not the same. I remember someone in my family asking me a few years ago with complete disbelief, but you've done so much work on yourself and you're a coach now, why aren't you healed yet? I mean, let's not even delve into how much this was really just about them wanting me to heal so that I could make their life easier. But also, this perception of healing is so wrong, because a healed person isn't someone who never feels fear or anger or emotion of any kind. It's someone who feels fear or emotions and still makes decisions, who feels uncertainty but still is able to move forward, who feels vulnerability and all that that entails and still remains open. It's not some perfect, unfeeling being who is kind of consistent for everyone else and never has a difficult moment. It's someone who has the capacity to hold all of that without splitting apart and is still capable of building a life in which they thrive. That's actually what resilience looks like too. Not the absence of discomfort, but the capacity to hold it. And capacity is really what this conversation comes back to, because so often I see people trying to build lives that their nervous systems just don't have the capacity to hold, and then blaming themselves when the result of that is self-sabotage. Because self-sabotage is what your nervous system will always do when the capacity is not there. Whether that is you kind of shutting down, walking away, not showing up, or obsessively focusing on what other people might think. All of those things can be a sign of a lack of capacity in your nervous system. As someone who lived like that for a very long time, I can tell you that so much feels unsafe when the capacity isn't there. Success, visibility, being seen, change, all of those things will feel unsafe to a nervous system that lacks capacity. So what does your nervous system do when it detects a lack of capacity or a lack of safety? It pulls back towards what's familiar. But because we don't often realize that that's actually what is happening in the moment, instead of acknowledging how the nervous system is applying the brakes, we really believe it when we come up with these very convincing stories about why we are going to stay exactly where we are. And they can sound a bit like, you know, maybe I don't really want this. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe I'll do it next year. Maybe I'm just focusing on healing first. But if you're doing that, you're not healing. You're actually hiding from what's really happening. So because this can be quite confusing and it is difficult to see when you're doing it, here are some of the signs that you might be on the hiding side of this. So number 1, you are waiting to feel ready before you take action. Number 2, you are consuming endless content, books, podcasts, but rarely doing anything with what you learn in them. Number 3, you're postponing decisions because you're waiting for certainty. Number 4, you've convinced yourself that you don't want something, but actually you secretly think about it all the time. Number 5, your life has become increasingly controlled and predictable. And number 6, you're using healing language to justify staying exactly where you are. So none of these indicate any fault or flaw in you. Just to be really clear about that. We've all been there. We've all kind of experienced a couple of these. I certainly have. But if any of them really resonate with you, then that is a good sign that your nervous system doesn't currently have the capacity for the life that you might be trying to build. The good news is you can build capacity in your nervous system at any time, but you do have to do it intentionally, because this isn't something that will just fix itself. The nervous system needs a gentle, firm hand when it comes to building capacity and growth. The point I really want to emphasize here is that healing should make your life bigger. It should create more honesty, more self-expression, more connection, more creativity, and more possibility. More of you, not less. I sometimes think one of the easiest ways to tell the difference between healing and hiding is to look at the direction in which your life is moving. Is your world expanding or is it contracting? Are you becoming more yourself or are you becoming less visible? Are you becoming more connected or more isolated? More honest or more careful? Because I've worked with people who became so good at protecting themselves that they accidentally protected themselves from all the things that they really wanted in life. And that is genuinely heartbreaking, because it can often look so much like self-care and sound like self-awareness. And I love those things when they are being used in the right way. But that's not what's at play when this is happening, because underneath everything is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being seen, fear of wanting something and not getting it. And all of those fears, completely valid. They make complete sense. But if we're not careful, they can become the architects of our lives. I actually don't think the goal of healing is to create a life where nothing triggers you. I think the goal is to create a nervous system that can hold more life, more certainty, more uncertainty, more visibility, more intimacy, more opportunity, more joy, more risk, more possibility, because all of those things exist together. You don't get one without the other. You can't filter out the ones you don't want. And if your version of healing is making your life smaller, quieter, and increasingly restricted, then I think it really is worth asking yourself the question that I posed at the start of this. Are you healing or are you hiding? Because one will eventually make your world bigger and the other will keep convincing you that smaller is safer, when in reality, it's just fear with a very persuasive marketing strategy. Hopefully that's been a helpful insight into the difference between healing and hiding. If you resonate with the hiding side of things and you are ready to break out of those patterns, this is something I can help with. You can book an intro call using the link in the show notes to come and have a chat with me about it. You can also come and find me on Instagram at Alex Resilience Coach and online at shore-coaching.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.
Resilience isn't about avoiding stress, it's about meeting it with strength. This adaptogenic trio is called our chill mix for a reason. Our award-winning calm and collected formula is a favourite among people with busy, anxious brains. I have combined lion's mane, ashwagandha and holy basil with sea greens to ease your racing mind and calm a jittery body. Consistency is key when it comes to adaptogens, so make calm and collected part of your evening ritual for calm, resilience and rest.